We'll just give it a couple of more minutes before we start, just to let other people to log in. Thanks. Okay, great. Why don't we start now? It's 12:04. I'm sure a few more people will join later on. But I just want to say good afternoon to everyone and thank you all for joining us. My name is Rhoda Rivera, committee member of AustCham's Women in Business Network in Hong Kong. I'll be your moderator for today. We're excited to be continuing our Financial Wellness for Women series with today's session focusing on cryptocurrency. Firstly, we'd like to thank our committee sponsors, Ambition, Macquarie, and Telstra, as well as Girls Just Want to Have Funds, the Irish, the Dutch, and the Swiss Chambers of Commerce in Hong Kong for their kind support. It's been an interesting time for digital assets, and particularly the crypto markets. And over the years, we've seen the emergence of this virtual asset, but understanding it can be a tad overwhelming. So particularly with so much information available online. And so today we're delighted to be joined by Amanda Xiang from Aspen Digital to give us some basic insights on crypto, its pros and cons, and what to consider before investing. Just a little bit on Amanda. Amanda manages business development for Aspen Digital's Greater China markets. She previously worked at Forbes Media and was founding member of Forbes Digital Assets and launched Forbes Global Alliance, Forbes Shopping, amongst other branded ventures. Warm welcome to you, Amanda, and of course to our attendees. Now, just a note to feel free to put your questions in the chat box. Myself and fellow committee member Emily Dunn will assist to go through them at the end of Amanda's presentation. And also a quick reminder to please put your devices on mute. And if you're not too shy, to also turn on your video cameras. Without further ado, over to you, Amanda.
Thank you. You guys can hear me well? Oh, good. Cool. Well, I wouldn't introduce myself too much, but I've been in the crypto space since 2018, kind of pulled into it by my times at Forbes, where they wanted to set up sort of like a Forbes digital asset news sort of channel. So that was sort of my into crypto. And then I actually went back to traditional finance a little bit, and that's sort of a very different background than a lot of people that stayed in crypto early, or whether sort of coming into crypto recently. So I've seen a lot of ups and downs of the industry, and also a lot of updated evolution of these coins and these themes that have come up over the years. 3 years, 4 years in crypto is kind of a long time compared to, if you would say in traditional finance, it's a short time. A lot has happened, and I was just chatting with Rhoda and everyone that even though I'm full-time in crypto, there's still a lot of new concepts. So I can completely understand where, a lot of people would feel overwhelmed in this space, not knowing where to start. So hopefully I'm here to answer some of your questions and being able to sort of dive into some very basic concept of what coins are, and maybe some keywords that you've heard of, metaverse, NFT. Why are they even great things to invest into, right? Those are all questions that we probably all have ourselves. So let's start at sort of the very basics of what everything is. Basically the concept of blockchain, right? You probably heard of this word again, but again, there's so many different informations out there. But to simplify this, blockchain really is a centralized network. It's almost like a peer-to-peer transaction, a database, a cloud information data bank that everyone have access to, all the engineers and data sources have access to. So if you were to take this concept down a little bit and think about our daily lives, the life that we live in right now, that's not a blockchain. So for example, if you were to send money to your friend in the US, you use Venmo, and in Hong Kong, you probably use, PayMe, FPS, or even just bank wires, right? To you, it's probably simple, where you just push a button, send PayMe, scan a code, send it to a friend. But in a back end, that's not what actually happens. What actually happens is you send the data to your bank and tell your bank to wire to another bank, right? So there's a lot of intermediaries that needs to function really well. And obviously, if you're doing international wires, it's really long. And then there's like government restrictions, maybe some sort of like data privacy issues that you might be concerned about. But these things can basically happen, right? And that's caused by a lot of third parties involved in the middle, and also just the sheer number of partners that you need to make one simple transaction happen. Versus offline, you can just pay cash and do everything. So that's sort of where the idea of blockchain comes from, and is able to solve a lot of those problems. For example, in a blockchain, if you were to actually buy cryptocurrency, for example, or use that as a transaction, what you have is sort of an online wallet, if you call it. The wallet address is basically consists of numbers and numerical information, but basically you have a wallet address to yourself. It's anonymous. No one's able to connect this wallet address, this number, to you as Amanda, for example. But basically you have an online wallet, and you're able to send money from your wallet to another person via what? Not necessarily third party, right? So blockchain is where the data is stored, and that's why you're able to send numbered information to another wallet or to another end of the blockchain. And throughout the transaction, people are able to verify it publicly. All the information is transparent. You're seeing where your money actually lands, or does it actually land on the other wallet address that you're supposed to send it to, right? And everything is extremely instant. It's basically a split of a second, that's transaction. And there's no, again, the most important part is there is no sort of bank or this third party in the middle. Everything's on a blockchain, very transparent. And a lot of people use those data on the blockchain to be able to track what's going on in a market, right? Some people so create a lot of data about, okay, what are the transaction volumes going on today? Is the market sort of down today? What sort of coins that everyone's like purchasing? There's a lot of data that you can derive from it. So that's also another benefit that you're not seeing if compared to if you use just a traditional bank. Obviously, the bank's not going to tell them what is their revenue or their trading volume today. So as you can see, there's probably a lot of benefit coming to using blockchain. And there's where all the different concepts come from, right? So if you see this graph, the idea of blockchain only started around 2009 when Satoshi, the inventor of Bitcoin, if you will, sort of write the first white paper about, okay, the use of blockchain in these transactions and the idea of this digital gold currency, if you will, called Bitcoin that comes from. So it all started in 2009. That started with the concept of Bitcoin, the concept of blockchain, the concept of just this like peer-to-peer currency that doesn't need a government or a bank or these sort of like third party to transact. And then throughout the years, it's only been a little bit more than 10 years, but a lot has evolved, right? So for example, around 2015, that's when smart contracts started. And that's smart contract, people probably think of Ethereum. I'll dive into that a little bit more, but some keywords that you're probably seeing on this graph too, stable coins, for example, USDT, USDC, metaverse, you've definitely heard of, that's related to the NFTs or even these like virtual lands that you've been hearing. There's also GameFi. GameFi is the latest new thing, which means just sort of like blockchain games as well, games that live on a blockchain, and you're able to buy and sell a certain cloth or a certain sword in a particular game, and able to really own that piece of gaming asset and resell it or rent it out or do whatever you want on that. So that's sort of the ultimate idea, and it's kind of the same thing as an NFT. It's kind of part of NFTs where you own that piece of asset, you're able to trade it on the blockchain, you're able to see the ownership transfer. So there's a lot of different key words that you're seeing on here that you probably heard of, not sure how to connect them all together. So I'll dive into each one of them a little bit deeper as well, but this is sort of just the development of crypto, and I'm sure there's going to be more keywords that coming up. I've heard of layer 2 protocols already. There's like different like variation of this like NFT. So things are happening very quickly. It's a very new space, and that's why there's a lot of keywords that like people just need to really be updated about. But let's just start from something simple. So the next thing I'm going to dive into the difference between, for example, the biggest two cryptocurrencies, if you will, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin is long for BTC. Ethereum is ETH. So those are probably two words that you've heard of a lot. Bitcoin is kind of the ancient, if you will, sort of digital gold variation. So it's very similar to it because it doesn't have really much function, or it's not built as a smart contract. It's just a digital gold living on a blockchain, but it's launched in 2009. A lot of people probably heard of the word Satoshi. So it's actually like written by this, we still don't know who this person is, Satoshi. There's a white paper online that everyone sort of refers to, and it dives a lot into sort of why Bitcoin is invented, how it's supposed to function. That's a resource that you're able to get online if you want to dive deeper. But Bitcoin obviously is one of the most expensive cryptocurrency per coin, per token, if you will. And obviously because it lives the longest, it's been around the longest, and it's also sort of the biggest market cap coin because everyone knows about it, right? But if you go down the market cap a little bit, you've probably heard of Ethereum, you've probably heard of USDT, USDC, BNB, XRP. So those are just like big market cap coins. I'm just going to dive a little bit into Ethereum because I think it's one of the most important altcoins, if you will. Altcoins usually refers to anything that's beyond Bitcoin, but nowadays it's been sort of looping out of Ethereum because Ethereum has become so much bigger. It's basically the second biggest cryptocurrency in the world. So anything below these two, I would probably call them altcoin or alternative coins. Ethereum was launched in 2015, so it seems like a long time ago, but it's still relatively new, but a lot of believers are accumulating in sort of the Ethereum world. The reason why it's actually the first sort of smart contract. So it's the blockchain ecosystem that is built. Obviously, the company launched a token called Ethereum, but it's the Ethereum blockchain. So a lot of sort of NFTs that you've heard of recently are all transact on Ethereum, especially the bigger market cap NFTs, or just a lot of tokens are built on top of this Ethereum smart contract. So it's basically the foundation of 99% of what's happening in the crypto space right now, because a lot of things are built on top of it. A lot of metaverse, a lot of NFTs are built on top of it. And this enables, NFT transactions to happen on the blockchain. You're able to track the data on this Ethereum blockchain. Some of the keywords that you've probably heard of before called gas fees comes from Ethereum, because you need to pay there's still a transaction cost for people to be able to manage all those data on the blockchain, right? So these keywords all come from Ethereum. And to go further, there are other coins that you might have heard of. So this is just a little comparison of all the major tokens or major coins, if you will. So just down the line, again, like I said, below that line, I'd probably call it alternative coins or altcoins. Above that are the two major market cap coins, and those I just call them BTC, ETH, the more sort of stable in pricing coins. So when you go down the road of altcoin and down the market cap list, there's a gazillion tokens. So honestly, there's thousands and thousands of them. So a lot of people get really overwhelmed by how many tokens are there. It's like, okay, have you heard of this token today? Have you heard of that token today? But there's actually a lot of tokens that even I can't really follow. But basically you just need to know a few, right? So you probably heard of Solana, you probably heard of Avalanche. Those are all new smart contract and blockchains that claim to be a lot faster and more efficient than Ethereum. A lot of believers of Solana are NFT lovers, because Solana specializes in sort of NFT transactions, and the gas fees of using Solana blockchain to transact especially NFT related things are basically cheaper than Ethereum. So that's sort of where it came from. It came from that school of Ethereum lovers as well, wanting to build a better blockchain than Ethereum. But essentially, a lot of these altcoins or new companies are all trying to make this whole ecosystem better. So whether it be more efficient transaction, whether it be cheaper gas fee, cheaper cost, whether it be sort of the technology behind it, they all come from sort of cut from the same cloth, most of them at least. And there's also other tokens that are similar to sort of like stocks of a company, right? So for example, you've heard of Sandbox. It's a virtual land company that launches their own token. It's actually just SAND, SAND. That's what the token is called. So some people consider those as almost like buying stocks of a company, but you have the governance ability. So if you buy, for example, like a lot of SAND token and you are a majority shareholder of Sandbox, you're able to make a lot of decisions, right? So it's kind of similar to a stock, but just living again in this like crypto world, and it's by a cryptocurrency related or this like metaverse related companies. How to differentiate these like coins, or where to even start looking at, okay, what are these coins? What do they do? So before you get overwhelmed, just a few points of like how to differentiate or how to really understand these coins. I think one thing is the volatility, right? So if you are looking for more stable cryptocurrencies, look above the line, those two. Anything altcoins, and obviously with smaller market cap, obviously there's going to be fluctuations and higher volatility. Other thing is just a few concepts, right? Like bigger market cap coins that are BTC, ETH, they're also altcoins. And there's actually a third group of coins that's not on this chart, but they're called stable coins. So the two biggest stable coins really are USDC and USDT. USDC is backed by US dollars, so actually backed by cash. USDT lives a little bit longer, and that's why a lot of people still use USDT You've probably heard of the word tether. USDT is very similar to USDC, where USDT is backed by basically US bonds, stocks. So it's like things that have a little bit of volatility and fluctuation in pricing. So that's why it sometimes waver between like 0.99 US dollars per USDT. Sometimes it's 0.98, a little bit of a change, but basically 1-to-1 USDT, US dollars. So again, stable coin, just two that you have to remember: USDC and USDT. USDC is the one backed by cash. USDT is the one that's backed by assets. But basically, the idea behind these stable coins is that the pricing is going to be relatively stable, and it's really backed by assets. So a lot of people are sort of transitioning into using these as the digital gold, the digital currency, using to the maximum potential of all the benefits of using cryptocurrency, right? For example, like really fast transactions that you're able to send across borders, international transfers that are instant. Some people are starting to use USDT and USDC stable coins to do so instead of actually bank wiring, right? So just three categories of coins that you can start with. And also there are sort of the stock coins, if you will. So like, for example, Sand, or for example, BNB you see on there at the bottom. Those are kind of like stock related coins. So you're almost buying into a Web3 company's stock. It's very related to, for example, this BNB is a so-called stable coin launched by Binance, the crypto exchange. And if you buy BNB, you're basically buying their stock, because Binance is understood to be like so big that they can't fail, and that's why, you know, a lot of people think they're kind of one of the stable coin, and it's very much tied to how the company is doing. For example, obviously Sand, like I was mentioning, is very tied to how Sandbox, the company, is doing. So these are just some ways to start looking at different coins, and obviously before you dive too deep into it, to understand really what the coins actually mean and what are their differences. You know, there's a million smart contract related coins that are Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche. There's a million of so claimed stable coins that are beyond just USDT, USDC, BNB, that claims to do what they do, right? So basically just do your research and start from these categories, and depending on what your risk appetite is, right? If you are very wary of the whole space, then don't look at anything that's beyond BTC, ETH, or stablecoin. If you're someone who really loves to understand the technology behind them, doesn't mind the volatility in terms of investment, then sure, look at altcoins. So before I overwhelm you a little bit more, let's dive into another sort of topic. Before I do that, I want to admit someone into the room. I'm sorry, 1 second. Oh, okay. All right. Let's move on to another topic that is a little bit easier to understand. It's basically called decentralized finance. Decentralized finance is very similar to just traditional finance. So DeFi, that is decentralized finance. CeFi, if you see on the title there, it's called centralized finance. Basically, traditional centralized finance, where you centralize your transaction into a bank and the bank does it for you. That's essentially what it means. DeFi, I think, is the concept of how blockchain can benefit the world is really prevalent in the DeFi landscape. So if you think of, for example, what is blockchain good for, right? Blockchain is good for tracking transactions, making sure that they're effective, they're accurate, they're transparent, there's no money laundering, for example, there's no AML issues. So that's good for that, right? There's also like data ownership, for example, you're able to protect your own data. Like, for example, let's say I am a musician, I am a creative person, I drew a painting, I made a music. I'm able to track every transaction out there every ownership use or copyright use out there after I release that music, after I release that art. So that's good for sort of data ownership or protection. And that's sort of one of the benefit of using blockchain, right? What are other benefits of using blockchain? Tracking the record, decentralization, not having to use a third party, and therefore the fees are lower, the speed is higher. All of these benefits is very prevalent example of sort of DeFi usage you can see. So let's say take, for example, traditional exchange. An example is, for example, Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Obviously, you can't see what the transactions are going through, like who transacted what, how much they're buying into the stock, yada, yada. But for DeFi, if you see on the top left corner, Uniswap, Curve, all these decentralized exchanges are able to do that. You're able to see all the transaction happening. And there are other companies in DeFi landscape that does this basically the same thing as traditional finance, right? For example, how do you get yields using a cryptocurrency? You're able to do that. How? Because they have these like lending platform that basically does the same thing as a traditional finance. For example, when you get a fixed deposit in a bank, you're able to get, I don't know, currently maybe like 3%, right? How does a bank get that yields? Is because they do borrowing and lending behind your back. They, take your money, lend it to someone else with a higher rate, and they give you back a little percent of what they actually earn, right? So that's basically the concept of traditional finance and using a bank to do these borrowing lending. In the DeFi world, there are companies that does borrowing lending too, but just denominated in different sort of cryptocurrencies. For example, you're able to get a stablecoin yield of maybe 5, 6, 7% recently. You're able to, for example, purchase the Bitcoin and put it on a lending platform such as Aave or these sort of or Compound, these sort of companies, and they're able to give you, I don't know, 1 to 2% return of Bitcoin because they're lending and borrowing on the back end. So it's very similar to traditional finance, really, but just denominated in a whole different set of currencies. But you have these like wallet companies. You're able to put it into a vault of cold storage. It's basically a vault, like it's just living in the clouds basically, but a whole different set of privacy and security on that. You're able to do derivatives on it. You're able to really manage your assets. You're able to do margin trading. So there's a lot of different companies that are doing specific things within the category. Again, can be very overwhelming if you just look at all these names, but if you categorize them together, it's basically the same thing as traditional finance. You have all these sort of exchanges, you have lending companies, you have vaults that do like, basically having a vault or like a storage at home. You stick piles of gold in it. Kind of similar thing, but just again in crypto and living in the clouds basically. Now diving into a little bit more interesting things. So off the basic, a little bit more interesting things, NFTs and obviously the metaverse. I'll talk a little bit about that too. And what are NFTs, right? Again, the basic of all of these is that everything lives on a blockchain. So NFTs in long term it's called non-fungible token. Non-fungible means nothing can be replicated. It's unique, one of a kind. So how do you do that? Again, is by storing the data on a blockchain. For example, let's say I have this one monkey. It's actually called Bored Ape Yacht Club. That's the sort of series of NFTs that they're doing, that you're seeing these like little cross-eye or doopy eyes monkeys NFTs. The other one that you're seeing here are called CryptoPunks. So these are the two biggest sort of NFT in terms of market cap. They're basically one pixelated image just costs like millions and millions of US dollars. Obviously, these are the most expensive ones. But for example, I have a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, right? Like, how am I able to say that this is one of a kind and it's owned by me? Through blockchain. Like, everyone's able to see, okay, this wallet address has the ownership of this monkey. And if you're using this monkey's image, you have to pay this wallet address a copyright fee, for example. Or you're not able to resell this monkey if you don't have this original wallet address approval, or not even approval, like this wallet address has to be the one doing the transaction, for example. So all of these, again, activities, data ownership is recorded on a blockchain. So it's a little bit different than, for example, if you buy a piece of art, a physical art at home, technically someone can come into your room and take a picture and resend it to friends, but technically those sort of photos are not an indication of this person owning it, right? Or how do you even say that which piece of art, which Picasso is the original? It's pretty hard to track all these. So the concept of NFT is that you're able to track all the transactions, you're able to track the ownership. You're able to pay, for example, I was mentioning these like music NFTs or these like art NFTs. You're able to pay the original writer of the music all the way through, okay, the production, the producer, the musicians playing on it, the singer doing the original demo, the company that's managing it, everyone. So that kind of is really beneficial for the whole industry, and a lot of industry, not just music, not just art, not just gaming, but any industry that benefits from these sort of tracking, to be able to fairly pay out every single transaction and everyone that contributed to the works of it. So I think it's a great concept. What's lacking in the space right now, and that's also why it's causing so much confusion to people, it's like, why is this one simple JPEG so expensive? It doesn't make any sense. It's still super early in the whole space, and to be fair, it doesn't completely make sense to me too. But why? Because there's not enough sort of brilliant use cases yet. Everyone's still trying to figure it out. The whole industry is still super new. So the development till recently is that these NFTs are not just images that you can transact, but also act as sort of club membership or these like exclusive membership into particular things, additional things that you can do, right? For example, Bored Ape Yacht Club is one of the better examples of how that's really being fully explored. For example, they have this like Bored Ape Yacht Club holders, this NFT holders yacht, specific yacht that they can go into only if they hold this NFT. They have these like offline burgers in LA that like has their faces. They can print their own like NFTs on there because they are the ownership holder, so they can do whatever they want with those like prints, right? Not anyone else. There are also, for example, Hong Kong locally, there's a DAO, an organization called 8DAO. And these are specifically for NFT holders of 8DAO that you have to be selected before you're able to buy one, or that is just super expensive. And it ends up being a club that only has, you know, famous actor and actresses, politicians, really good entrepreneurs. So, for example, people like you know, Chris Brown or Lady Gaga or Paris Hilton that holds these like really expensive NFTs are able to get in and mingle without the interference of like other people outside of the community, right? So those are some use cases. Recently, I've seen in the news that there are like international music festivals that's launching this like global NFT, and if you buy an NFT, you're able to, for lifetime, being able to get VIP tickets or seats in all of these like music festival, or like you buy this lifetime NFT, you're able to go for free, for example. So I think you see news every day that there's something new, but it also means that, you know, the whole industry is improving and trying to figure out, okay, what additional things that you can do with NFTs instead of earlier days where it's literally just selling a JPEG, an image. There's also, I think, maybe more prevalent to fashion or luxury items lovers like myself, that, you know, for example, Chanel earlier this year, I believe, changed their sort of authenticity cards into those like chips in their bags. And it's because they're moving into blockchain technology where they can actually scan the tag and being able to see, okay, who have transacted this particular handbag. And obviously that would be very useful in sorting out the counterfeits and sort of just any improper use of copyright ownership in the luxury goods industry, right? That's not just, you know, to handbags or particularly to Chanel. You've heard of, you know, Gucci buying a virtual land or doing some sort of things with the blockchain technology. And I think in those sort of cases, super useful. But again, back to my point in the beginning is that the whole NFT space, it could be confusing. You might still not understand why it's worth so much, but it's definitely on its way to figure out a lot of different use cases. And those are just examples that I've mentioned that I think are very good beginnings. And then diving into metaverse, I mentioned a little bit, right? For example, a lot of companies are getting into these like virtual lands. You've heard of probably Sandbox, Decentraland. These two companies are the biggest. Sandbox is held by, I don't know if you guys know, but it's actually held by a Hong Kong company called Animoca Brands. They're in Cyberport. So it's a one of the rare Hong Kong unicorn startups, and they're worth I think $7 billion now. So it is these sort of metaverse of different virtual lands that you can buy and build on top of it. So think of Minecraft, for example. Minecraft is a Web2 company. You can build your own land, you can build your own castle, you can have like avatars in it and run around in it. So it's kind of the same thing, but just built on Web3 capacity. I'll dive into that concept a little bit more as well. But basically you own everything you build. You buy a piece of land, you put money into it, and you're able to build land that belongs to you, and you can rent it out, sell it again, all within this universe we call metaverse. So again, very early in the days, you see a lot of companies sort of getting into it already. So for example, some good use cases is that SCMP bought a piece of land on Sandbox and built this artifact library gallery, if you will. So they made like every year their old newspapers and their news into images and into NFTs that they sell to people. It's like, okay, own a piece of history of Hong Kong, for example. Adrian Xiang also bought a piece of land that he claims to, might be building like hotels or some like entertainment facilities on there. You also see banks, for example, like JP Morgan, buying a piece of land on, I believe it's Decentraland, where they built this like metaverse customer service center or this like VIP center. So it is a little bit of a vague concept. But again, I think it's still early days where people are figuring out, right? And I think a lot of people say that sort of AR and VR technology will ultimately merge together and make it a little bit more seamless in the real life versus virtual life transition. We don't know exactly how that looks like, but it's definitely like a lot of improvement compared to before, where you have these like chunky glasses of VR. Now, I think the other day I saw that Facebook or Meta has launched these like really thin like Oculus glasses that's able to bring you into the metaverse, connects to either Sandbox or Decentraland. So things like that are happening. People are buying off virtual lands, but I also think that these are very, very long-term investment, that they know what they're doing. They know that, okay, they're just buying really early in the game and it's still in the middle of figuring out, but the piece of land is going to increase in value, for example. The last concept I want to mention, I've dived into that a little bit, is the very coagulated word, or the overarching word, called Web 3.0. Web 3.0, obviously you got to have 2.0, 1.0, right? 1.0, I think maybe some of us have experienced before, but just the very early on black and white websites of HTML created just words, right? So it's almost like a read only. It's like a single channel that feeds back to you. Very simple images, right? Those are the really early days of Web 1.0. We now live in Web 2.0, where it's read and write. So both sides of the equation contribute to the content in the world. For example, Facebook, Meta, Instagram, Google, these are all conglomerates that kind of aggregate all the data that you provide, whether directly or indirectly, and then feed it back to you. For example, I am actually contributing to the world of Instagram when I post something, but then you're also reading off other people's contribution, other people's posts, right? So it's kind of like a two-way stream. Everything's global, but the issue is conglomerates and big companies own these data that you provide. whether you do it, unknowingly or knowingly, but you don't own the data that you've given out already. So the whole world is moving into this Web 3.0. And I think this is something that's super evident and is beneficial. And everything that I've said just now all live within this theme, right? For example, cryptocurrency, the idea is you own your data, you own the transaction, you're able to see the transactions. So that's a benefit of using cryptocurrency, super fast, yada, yada. Metaverse, again, you own your piece of land. Whatever you do on a piece of land, you're able to sell it, rent it, or the games that you're playing in the metaverse. You're able to own the sword that you bought for this particular avatar, and you're able to resell it, right? You are able to own all the music copyrights that you've done, or the art piece that you've done, and you're able to track for a million years afterwards, if this continues on, obviously, or hundreds of years, decades afterwards, who has purchased your piece and who's resold it to, and you're able to know the ultimate owner, who that is. So that's the essence of Web 3.0, where you can read, you can write, you can contribute, but again, you own all the data that you contributed. There's no intermediary, there is no permission needed. You are able to say where you want your data to be stored, who you want to send it to. The whole world owns everything within it. So there's no more banks, there's no more government. That's the ultimate goal, right? That's the ultimate sort of decentralization that everyone's talking about. So hopefully that you're able to see all of these themes coming together, right? The idea of crypto is that there's no government owned, there's no banks. The concept of NFTs is you're owning everything that you create. The concept of metaverse, again, very similar. Metaverse, GameFi, very similar. You own everything that you purchase and you're able to resell it. There are stable coins such as, I think Bitcoin, Ethereum, especially, all of these things are building on top of. And these are all coming from the concept of Web 3.0. So I think that's the overarching theme and where the whole world is basically moving towards. And hopefully that gives a clearer picture of why cryptocurrencies and all these keywords that you've heard of all exist. It's all because of this global movement of working into Web 3.0. Let me take a little pause there. I see that there's a lot of chats actually. But I will move into sort of the why, how do you get into crypto? Why do you invest in crypto? Why all of these noise? Why all of these information? I won't dive too deep into this slide. You can read a lot of information, but these are just basically bigger players you can see in the crypto market. I've mentioned Animoca Brands, it's the parent company of Sandbox, and a lot of gaming, Web3 gaming companies. There are a lot of crypto exchanges such as crypto.com, Bobby, that you're able to buy and sell a lot of these cryptocurrencies, right? But one thing is that, like many parts of the world, Hong Kong's still not as clear in terms of regulations and security and licenses of all of these companies. But you've seen over the years that government has done some improvement. A few months ago, they already announced that next year in March, they're going to launch this VASP license, Virtual Asset Service Provider license, that is going to clear up a lot of question, because everyone who operates in a crypto space now needs that license when it gets launched in March. We also know that in the FinTech Week, basically next week, essentially, Paul Chen is going to announce something more. So potentially that might be elimination to whether retail investors can do that, whether professional investors can do that, what are restricted and what's not. But right now it's kind of in a gray area that everyone's kind of doing their own thing. So it is a little unclear, but it will get clearer. But for now, I think a few advantage, disadvantage to investing in crypto and how you safely invest into it, with the idea that the macro environment's being a little gray area, iffy. So just being very clear about like why you want to get into it, or what considerations you need to have to basically dive deeper into it, right? So I've mentioned a lot of advantages of crypto. I won't dive deeper, but I know that there's a lot of concern in terms of like disadvantage, right? I would add a but to all of these points. I think there are ways to eliminate all these, not eliminate completely, but to be able to understand a little bit better, so that you are able to get around these like disadvantage, right? For example, when I say limited acceptance of cryptocurrency, yes, in Hong Kong, limited acceptance, right? But there are credit cards that come out, there are debit cards that come out. There are, for example, countries, not just companies, countries that have completely accepted the idea of cryptocurrency as like an official form of payment. For example, El Salvador, in Starbucks and McDonald's and all these like bigger sort of chain restaurants and businesses, you're able to pay with Bitcoin, you're able to pay with Ethereum and a lot of different bigger cryptocurrencies. Some people would say, crypto high volatility. Actually, the first word that comes into mind often is high volatility. I would put that as you need a more formal understanding of different coins, right? For example, if you are talking about altcoins, some low market cap coins that not a lot of people have heard of, then yeah, sure, high volatility. But if you're talking about stable coins, you're talking about BTC, Ethereum, then less so, right? Especially stablecoin, less so. So there are categories within cryptocurrencies that are not high volatility. Next point, transactions are non-reversible. Yes. So for example, if you are transacting something in Ethereum blockchain and you accidentally send it to another blockchain, it's gone. But I think that's something that you can be avoided through education, through just being really mindful about, okay, different blockchains live differently, so things have to happen within one blockchain. And I also think the world will move into a space where the blockchains are all like merged together, just one huge network. It's like a country thing, right? Like currently, earlier in the stage right now, that everyone live in different blockchains, live in sort of different countries, and they all have their own set of rules and regulations, right? But ultimately, it's going to get all connected into a network. So I think these are sort of just like earlier days issues. There's also the cryptocurrency storage issue. It's like, okay, you hear of all these hackings, you hear of these like security issues. But again, I think like just with enough research, with enough education, you're able to at least know what are some bigger companies or more secure companies that you can use your wallets with. You can buy and hold or do these like exchanges with, buy and sell coins with. Some good resources that you can start looking at is, for example, just which market cap coins are better. Like what are some bigger market caps, more stable, if you will, cryptocurrencies. So you can go to, for example, a website called Coin Market Cap, looking at the sort of biggest market cap coins, what are the ideas behind each of the coins, what are their functions, when are they founded, the team, all the information's on there. Or you can look at these like blockchain specific like news outlets. For example, CoinMarketCap has their news outlet, Cointelegraph, bigger, for example, Forbes Digital Asset, obviously, bigger media companies are able to produce a little bit more accurate and unbiased information about, okay, what are some probably new companies that you look out for, what are some companies that might have a little bit more security. So I think instead of going to the mass media, go to a little bit more specific media sources and do a little bit more research before you dive in.
Cool, Amanda. Thank you so much. I'm Emily and I'll help with the Q&A section. So if you don't mind, we might start with any questions that anyone has. So the first one that Rhoda sent through was, do you have to be a bullish investor to invest in crypto, or do you think beginners can start? Or what would be your recommendations too for someone who's quite new to investing in considering putting some dollars into crypto?
Right. So I think I come from Aspen, right? So Aspen is an asset management company for crypto. So what I usually advise my clients is the first question I ask them is, what is your risk appetite, right? If you're someone who's literally just looking for maybe yield or want a little bit like pinky toe dive into the space, then start with something that's a little bit more stable. For example, just stablecoin yield that you're getting 6 to 8% versus in the traditional world, if you put it into a fixed deposit, you're probably just getting 3%. Given that you're comfortable with the idea of stablecoin, right? I'm prerequisiting everything with given that you're comfortable and you've done your research. If you are a little bit more, you have a little bit more risk appetite, then sure, look at, BTC, ETH, or even again, like I mentioned, go down the market cap and look at a little bit of altcoins, but obviously also do your research and understand why you're investing into them. But I think for now, just given the macro, what I've been telling my clients is that, be a little bit more conservative, like a stablecoin, BTC, ETH, start there at least. And then if you're interested, then dive a little bit more into specific projects or coins that you're interested in.
Okay, awesome. Amanda, can I ask, so you talked about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you were mentioning that something like, I think you said 99% of what's happening in the crypto space is being built on Ethereum blockchain or smart contract. Can I ask, the market cap for Bitcoin on the slide you showed was around 380 billion, whereas Ethereum is just about 140 billion. So how come, Bitcoin is still worth so much more in the market compared to Ethereum if Ethereum is doing so much at the moment, or it seems to be that other companies are trusting it?
Let me correct myself to say majority or a lot of smart contract is built like on the basis of Ethereum, or sort of like this similar concept to Ethereum where it's like a smart contract versus Bitcoin just being a token, right? I think it's the same issue with USDC versus USDT. It's a constant debate. There are, again, because the space is so new, there's so many like new developments on top of each other, then there are better things coming out all the time, but doesn't necessarily mean that it can really overtake the old ones. Again, time can tell, but I think we're now in the process of, like, for example, USDC is overtaking USDT because obviously people see that, backed by actual cash is better than backed by some sort of stock or bonds, right? But because it's existed for so long, the name's out there, then it's just difficult to switch. There's a lot of infrastructure built on top of it. So the same thing with Bitcoin, right? It's launched in 2009. It's also like the biggest market cap. So a lot of very traditional or like less risky investors would want to invest in something with a huge market cap already. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. Ethereum is a smaller market cap. It's cost less. So riskier investor might be looking into Ethereum versus more conservative might be looking into Bitcoin. Then it just perpetuates, right?
Okay, interesting. Does anyone else have any other questions? We've got one more. How do you get exposure investment in Web 3.0? And is crypto one way to gain exposure?
Okay, sorry, let me just stop my screen share. Sorry, 1 second. How do you get exposure into crypto? Well, crypto is within the theme of Web3, right? So it's all compiled together into the theme of Web3. Again, I think you do need crypto to get into the space, because even if you just want to dive into metaverse, GameFi, NFT, these sort of concepts, you do have to buy those things with crypto. But again, I think like don't be intimidated by the word crypto, because you can have BTC, Ethereum, these sort of coins, you can have altcoins, but you also have stable coins, right? Stable coins, you can buy $1 USDC with $1 US, basically. So it's basically the same thing, but just digitalized. So I do think that you need to have some sort of basic understanding of crypto for sure.
Okay, and are there any recommended platforms to invest in the metaverse or buy NFT from Vanilla?
Invest in the metaverse. So I think depends on how you want to invest. There are other things that I think more professional investors, or you need to know the right people to do. For example, you can invest into the equity of Animoca brands or these sort of like Web3 companies that are building these things, right? But I presume that you're not meaning investing in those companies, but maybe buying a token, then I would suggest you buying a token or NFT. Then I would suggest you look at OpenSea. That is the biggest sort of NFT platform out there. And obviously there are specific things, specific companies doing specific things in the space. So like, for example, OpenSea is a little bit more specific to NFTs. There's Rareable, Super Rare, these sort of companies specific for like music NFTs. There are LifeRx, which is specific to really high-end, like Picasso-like, sort of Da Vinci-like NFTs version of them. So I think depends on what you would want. Again, do your research, but I think OpenSea is a good place to start in terms of just NFTs.
Okay. Awesome. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, actually, Amanda, you mentioned earlier that the Financial Secretary, Paul Chan, said last week that Hong Kong is set to roll out policies dictating how the city plans to become global center for virtual asset investors. Do you think Hong Kong has the capability to hold this status? And are there any particular market that Hong Kong can benchmark against?
I think Hong Kong is constantly being compared to Singapore. And I think that's where sort of these announcements come from. So everyone's starting to realize a lot of people, or at least a lot of crypto companies, are moving to Singapore. But I've actually had numerous conversations with legislators and people who, like big firm CEOs, right? And I think everyone recognizes that Hong Kong is still really transparent in terms of what they do, and still is the sort of connection between like China and global, and it's a very different position than, you know, Singapore, than a lot of places. So as long as regulations become clearer, people will probably, or companies will probably want to come back to Hong Kong. I think that's what sort of that announcement will hopefully create the sentiment. But I know that again, we asked, we're very close with the legislators at in terms of crypto, so we know that for sure there are already plans ahead to sort of move back the capital into Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has always been sort of one of the hubs, the most important hubs of crypto in Asia and in the world. You know, FTX, Animoca brands, these sort of companies all got incubated from Hong Kong. Unfortunately, FTX moved out, but Animoca brands is still here. It's the biggest giant in GameFi and metaverse, at least in Asia. So I think that's some sort of important data that people know.
Do we have a final question for anyone? Otherwise, Amanda, if we don't have any new questions coming through, we'll just invite you to say any last things that come to mind, or any sort of takeaways that you think everyone should consider.
Yeah, I think the concept of everything that I've talked about, it's a lot of keywords. It's very confusing, but again, like, it's very similar to traditional finance. So I think, like, just don't be intimidated once you figure out which is which. For example, like this cryptocurrency equals to coins, or like, oh, they actually do yield products as well. Or, you know, there's asset management as well, or there are companies doing that. As long as you figure that basic understanding out, it's relatively easy to understand. And also I think like having someone to guide you through the process is really important. Someone in the expert in the industry. So I think feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure like you guys will send out the information. I'm happy to connect directly, but also just find an expert in this space to guide you through it and do your research before you invest, for sure.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Amanda.
All right,
and thank you, Rhoda, for organising everything, and thanks to Chloe as well. So thank you so much, Amanda. That was really amazing. Thank you so much for all the preparation and for freely donating your time. So thank you, and expertise.
All right, have a good day, guys.
Thank you all.